Okay, first I thought it'd be a good thing to look at two or three completed works where we can identify the main materials, give them some names and the main processes. So today I've chosen this piece here, meadow, another meadow piece, and this piece here, which is a tree. So we'll just have a little look at these, and I'll go through the names, identify the names of the materials, and then briefly talk about how they were put together. So as you can see, this is very textured. There's some tiny pieces of colour, larger ones, and there's some line work, and the piece has been put together in layers. Okay, first of all, I think it's worth identifying the names of this material here underneath the very light material. Now this is a glass powder, and it's very fine, and we put that on with a sieve usually, or you can sprinkle a little bit on with your fingers, but I tend to prefer using it with a sieve. And I sort of use it as a foundation. I don't try to get complete coverage, but I just think it helps a little bit. Next we want to look at some of the finer coloured materials, or not finer, the next grade up, but it's still quite fine. And this is, probably the finest speckled material that I have. It is called creTe, and it comes in transparent colours and opaque colours. And I'll just take you over here. So in this, I've got quite a selection of this here. Okay, and you can see I'm picking it up with my hands. It's not cutting me. Okay, some of these colours change a little bit when you're firing them. Some of them become brighter and some of them stay the same. So there is going to be a wait and see element about that. Okay, so it's really quite fine. This one here changes quite a bit. It could become quite a deep sort of mauve fuchsia. Okay, and this one becomes a bit brighter. Okay. So that's the fine creTe. Then there's some coarser creTes. This orange here, its trade name is Marigold. So it's a bit coarser, and I'll show you that here. This is the Marigold. No, that's a transparent yellow medium. That actually becomes quite bright. That's the opaque Marigold. And this is the transparent Marigold. Okay, so it's amazing how much this changes, because it becomes this colour here. Okay. And then we've got a range of different greens in different grit sizes or frit sizes. And we've got some opaques that you cannot see through, as well as the transparents. And I think it's quite nice, quite effective to sort of use them together and have that contrast. Okay, you'll also notice that there's some line work in here. Okay, I'll just bring that away a bit. There's a darker black line. And then there's these transparent lines, and then there's some fine ones, okay, as well. And they're made in two different ways, okay. The darker black line is created on the back surface of the glass, using this item here. Okay, and it's a squeezy bottle technique. I'll show that individually afterwards. So it's a bit like this particular one is a little bit like a stained glass black shader. Okay, and the picked up a toothpick. These other cat pieces here that are slightly curled are made with a variety of these pieces of glass here, and this is called cane, and you can see here I've got a bent piece of cane, and that will be something that you can have fun with, bending this glass at home with a candle. Okay, so we've talked about powder, we've talked about frit, all these different speckles, cane. So we might want to just briefly have a look at these pieces, which I'm going to call mosaic pieces. Okay, so there's a selection of mosaic pieces here. Oops. Okay, in this box there are some lovely blues and greens cut in sort of shapes that remind you of leaves and petals, and then there's some lovely petal colours. Okay, so I'll put those together with a particular colour palette in mind. Okay, so that's a bit of a softer colour palette. Okay, in this box you've got your whites, so there's some opals which are semi-transparent, there's some opaques which are really sort of dense white, and there's a variety of sizes. Okay, and then this box here, that's sort of, I put this box together a bit more of my bold colours. So again, I've tried to cut some petal shapes up for you, some reds, which you might want to use, as highlights or inside the flowers. I keep forgetting my biology. And there's some black pieces which can also just be used for little accents. Okay. And then in this box, you've got quite a mixture. I've put some lengths in for people, but I think you'll probably use the smaller sizes just a little bit more. And it's quite fun if you want to stick them out on the piece of paper. I'll put some pieces of paper in and root around. Now, if you're going to use just your fingers, beware that you might get a few little cuts, and I'll put some of these tools in for you, and it will be your choice. Okay, you need to be quite sensible and work at a table and just be mindful of what you're working with. Okay, so that's the material. Oh, one thing while I'm here, in case I forget, with these mosaic materials and the frits, you also have opportunities to layer up, and that sort of really helps in some instances to create a bit of an optical quality. So there'll be some smaller pieces of the clear glass as well. Okay, these are the powders in here. Okay, so I'm just going to whiz around the table now and show you what else is in this box. Okay, so there's some Pva glue. You will use this for adhering the glue to the surface to sort of tack it so that we can transport it to the kiln, to the car, etc., etc. It's not used for as a permanent bond. the kiln does the permanent bond. Okay, there's this here, this wire here. Occasionally this gets clogged up, so you have to poke a bit of wire down here. This sieve is included along with a spoon, so that you can, put some of the powder in and just sort of tap it on. I'll do a separate thing on that. There's a candle. I'll get some matches, as most people don't have them in the house anymore, and that's for this to go with this glass cane. Okay, and that's where I'll do a separate thing on bending. There's some copper foil, so you can, not copper foil, copper wire that's been twisted, so you can make a little hook. These toothpicks here come in handy for just arranging the glass on the surface. Okay. Here's a Blue Peter moment here, halfway through. Okay, so you can sort of put things on and move them about, that type of thing. I've put some shape tools in, but you can just basic ones. I mean, I can't guarantee that these ones will be in at the time, but there are some shape tools. You might want to put some PVA on the surface and then, put the shape tool on and do some sprinkling of any of these materials, really. Or, you might want to draw on a piece of paper and put it underneath, a heart or something, and then use that as a template. It depends how many of my boxes are out at the time, but I'll try to put in some inspirational source material. Okay, so if you can't find what you're looking for, I tend to find with this project the Impressionists are really helpful. So you might want to Google Van Gogh, Monet, Manet, Pizarro, those types of artists. But additionally to that, I find Paul Klee really lends itself. There's a particular image I have in mind of Paul Klee's cat. So you can have a look at these artists on Google. So Paul Klee, that sort of thing. More graphic artists, contemporary artists, you might want to peruse. I've got Mark Hurld's workbook. I won't be sending my workbooks out, but if you want to Google Mark Hurld, he's pretty fantastic. Right, I'm going to be brave and try and say this chap's name, Ernst Haeckel. Really inspirational for sort of natural forms, but particularly detailed. Okay. And then also you've got Angie Lewing, who's a contemporary printmaker, and I find her particularly inspirational, not to copy her work, but to sort of consider her source material. Or you can always go into the garden and pick a bluebell. Okay?